everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Holland Land Office Museum's Artifact Video Series. My name is Ryan Duffy, and I'm the director of the museum, and this week we're going to talk about two veterans organizations that grew out of the Civil War that played a prominent role in Genesee County's history. The first is the GAR, as it was affectionately called, or the Grand Army of the Republic, which was a group organized shortly after the end of the Civil War, which was designated to bring veterans together of the conflict and to offer support, but also to bring men together through the commonality of their time during the conflict. And this group was sort of limited as it was only open to veterans of the Civil War, from the Union side in this case. But the second group was a little bit more expanded and sort of took over the role from the Grand Army of the Republic, and that was the Sons of Union Veterans. The Sons of Union Veterans might also be listed as the SUV if you see it labeled anywhere. But both these organizations had posts in Genesee County, and in some cases multiple posts throughout the county in the various communities dedicated either to local soldiers or well-known soldiers from mostly throughout New York State. We actually have quite a lot of items on display from both the GAR and the Sons of Union Veterans, so I'd like to show you those as we kind of go over some and you get the chance to look at them on your own. Now, as you can see here, we have a lot of reunion ribbons and buttons and souvenirs that would be given out at many of the encampments that would take place with these groups, and the local groups would meet here in Batavia a lot or throughout the rest of Western New York, as many of these union units comprised of men from several counties of Western New York. Now, the first GAR post in Batavia was actually set up in December 1874, though it only lasted a couple months, and this was named after Lieutenant Colonel Augustus I. Root, who was actually one of the last soldiers killed in the Civil War at Appomattox Courthouse. However, with the folding of the first chapter, a new chapter would soon spring up about 5 years later in July of 1881, and this was called the South Valley or Batavia Post number 224, and it was named after our own General Emory Upton, who grew up here in Batavia. And this was somewhat ironic, as the post actually came into being just several months after Upton committed suicide. And it was actually one of the first memorials to Emory Upton in that case. Soon after, Batavia charted another post, number 299, solely for Batavia. So the first one was more of the general area, but this was just for Batavia. And it had 30 members, and they would meet in Ellicott Hall, which was on Court Street, right here in Batavia, which was basically the old City Hall. And this was next to the old fire station as well. And this organization was actually a major player, as it was one of those that was heavily involved in the construction of the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, which we often call the Upton Monument, right there in front of the county courthouse at the intersection of Ellicott and East and West Main Street. Other GAR posts that came about across Genesee County, you had the John M. Hutchinson Post, number 243, which was chartered in Pavilion. You had the Phineas Staunton Post, number 396, that was chartered in September 1883 in Leroy, and they met in the Town Hall on Main Street. Now, this was named after Phineas Staunton, who was a portrait painter from Wyoming County and was a lieutenant colonel in the Civil War and actually died on an expedition to Ecuador. You had the Wilbur Fuller Post, number 412, which was chartered in Bergen in October 1883, and they met in the Bergen Town Hall. And finally, you had the Daniel W. Kinney Post, number 635, which was chartered in Corfu in September 1892, and they met in the International Order of Oddfellows Hall. And Kinney was a private in the 129th New York Volunteer Infantry and died of wounds that he sustained at the Battle of Cold Harbor. Sadly and predictably, none of these posts are still active today, as there are no Civil War veterans left, as the last one actually died in 1956. That was the last member of the GAR. And so after that, the GAR essentially ceased to be, though at the peak, there was over 400,000 members. Now, its successor, the Sons of Union Veterans, was not as restrictive in its membership, as it was open to any direct descendants of Civil War veterans or siblings. And the lineage could go on for quite a while. Now, the Sons of Union Veterans is created in 1881, and it acted very similar, as I mentioned, just with a wider membership. And at its peak in 1904, it had over 200,000 members, so it still was a very large organization. And the various functions of the Sons of Union Veterans was mostly to hold the encampments for their members, which would take place at other locations. And as I mentioned before, a lot of the ribbons and memorabilia here is related to those encampments. One of the posts was the PA Porter Post number 126, which was in Wilson, New York, and they hosted encampments in Batavia in 1887, 1917, and 1934. And this post was named after Colonel Peter Porter, the 129th New York Volunteers, who was actually killed in battle. In 1913, the State Department hosted their 30th encampment in Batavia at the Methodist Episcopal Church on East Main Street, and it had over 200 representatives in attendance. And we actually have a pin from that encampment in our collection here. So the Sons of Union Veterans maintained its active membership well into the 20th century. And in some cases, you might still be able to find some posts around, though not locally, but this was still shows you the impact of the Civil War and how far it reached, both in time and area, as they would have international and national encampments, and some of the memorabilia we have goes all the way out to California. So this was more than just a veterans agency. It was almost a celebration of the lives of the veterans through their descendants and their families, as it was a way to carry on their memory and allow their accomplishments and their bravery and their sacrifices to always be remembered. Well, I hope you enjoyed this next edition of our Artifact video series and learned a little bit more about some of the Civil War veterans organizations that were particularly active here in Genesee County. And if you enjoyed this little video, be sure to come on by the museum, as we have an entire case full of these items on display, and you can check them out with a little bit more detail. If you've missed any of our previous videos, please go back and check them out on our YouTube channel, Holland Land Office Museum. We have over 35 of these now, so we've been doing this for quite a little while, and it's built up quite a library. And be sure to stick around as we'll continue doing these into the future, and I hope you enjoyed it.